We'll do it live! Fuck it!
I'm Liz.
This is Surly Amy from skepchick.org.
I'm Keith from Sydney, Australia.
Hello, I'm Daryl Ray, author of Sex and God and The God Virus.
This is Rebecca Watson of skepchick.org.
I'm Vivian Wheeler from Planned Parenthood.
I am Devin Napoli from Planned Parenthood.
I am Richard Carrier.
I am Monette Richards from Secular Woman.
I am Stephen Olson from Carl Sagan's Dance Party.
I'm JT Eberhard, and I'm a he-thinker who loves the she-thinkers.
I'm Debbie Goddard. I'm from the Center for Inquiry and African Americans for Humanism, and I'm a human thinker.
I'm a Faisal, and I'm a he-thinker, she-thinker, they-thinker, it-thinker.
Hello, everybody. This is David Fitzgerald, and oh yes, I am a she-thinker.
Hello, and welcome to Secular She-Thinkers, where secular girls geek out and justifiably rage. I'm your host, Dory Mooneyham, joined by my PTSD panel, Caitlin, and our newest friend, Kate.
Hey!
Yay!
Hola!
Today is August 10th, 2014. Tonight we're continuing our mental health series with PTSD. We also have the secret word, the Boston Troll, the shitty sexist song, and shit neurotypical people say. But first, a word from our sponsors. She-Thinkers is sponsored by Audible.com. To check out their service and get a free audiobook of your choice, go to audibletrial.com/She-Thinkers. You can download books to your Apple and Android devices and just about anything else you might listen through. Again, go to audibletrial.com/She-Thinkers to download any free audiobook of your choice. That's SHETHINKERS, She-Thinkers. It's so lonely.
I still say you could do that to the tune of the Mickey Mouse song.
It's so lonely doing the She-Thinkers jingle by myself. Oh well. Alright, shall we jump into the secret word?
Go for it.
Caitlin, do you want to reveal what the secret word is?
Our secret word for the night is hypervigilance. Take a drink.
Man, those kids are louder than they usually are.
Yeah.
Alright, hypervigilance is...
Take a drink.
an enhanced state of sensory sensitivity accompanied by an exaggerated intensity of behaviors whose purpose is to detect threats. So, basically, it's being on edge could be a way to describe the sensory sensitivity, and engaging in sometimes overly complicated behaviors to try to avoid triggers and other potential things.
I like to call it never being able to turn off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ever. Never ever.
So, we'll talk a little bit more about hypervigilance, take a drink, later on during the show. But that's our secret word for tonight. So whenever you hear it, take a drink. Caitlin, do you have access to the show notes, right?
Give me a sec. Yeah.
Okay.
Should be able to.
Do you want to introduce our troll for the night?
I can.
All right.
Our troll for the night is, and I have to pull this up here to see what her actual name is. She's
Leah Delaria is her name.
Yeah, Leah Delaria. She's Big Boo on Orange is the New Black. And she went to this big visual arts exhibit that's being done like an old sugarcane warehouse, whatever. And all the exhibits are made out of like sugar, molasses, etc. to exhibit the racism behind that whole industry.
Yeah, it's at an old sugar plantation, and it's an art exhibit about slavery and the racism involved in the sugar industry throughout its history. So, kind of a heavy topic.
Sure.
Kind of something serious that you should, I don't know, take seriously when you go to see it.
And of course, lots of people go there and they prove why this is needed because they're just totally and utterly racist. They're looking at the Sphinx. It's like a mammy head for the face and like.
So let's describe the I guess the biggest installment of this art exhibit is a 40-foot tall Sphinx made out of sugar, and the head is the mammy stereotype, And then the body is the hypersexualized black female body. And that's the Sphinx that's created in this huge art exhibit. And in the over-sexualized black female body, you can see the vulva and butt and everything else. And Leah took a picture in front of the vulva, an inappropriate picture with inappropriate sexualizing comments, because she just apparently completely missed the point of the Kara Walker exhibit.
It seems to me like she's the type to like buy a reproduction of that and put it in her living room, much as my grandmother would a mammy doll.
Yeah, so...
Well, I mean, it's not just her. I mean, there's lots of white people who go there. They completely miss it, and they basically recreate the very acts of racism that the art is meant to critique. I mean, they're in there, they're licking it, they're cupping it, they're generally just abusing the work. And she got a bunch of them, and she had one like where she's standing between the breasts, and she had a caption that she posted that said "sugar tits."
Yeah.
Oh my. Like, I understand white people appropriate things. That is, like, what they do.
You would think if you're going to an art... Like, you're going to an art exhibit about racism. Like, you're going to an art exhibit at a sugar plantation that is all about racism in the sugar industry's history. You would think that you would be on at least semi-good behavior while you're there. And not fucking around taking completely inappropriate pictures.
One would think.
And here's the thing that tops it all on top of it for her, making her the troll rather than others, is she posted it to her Twitter, someone called her out on it saying, "Whoa, what the hell?" And she blew up all defensively like, "It's always a feminist statement when a lesbian expresses her sexuality, period."
Look, I'm sex positive. I appreciate expression, but you see, like when you're a member of one oppressed group, but not necessarily the other,
that doesn't give you just blank
to say your oppressed group is more important than this oppressed group or this oppressed group.
Yeah. Like, okay, when I get called out on shit that I deserve to be called out on, I generally just say, well, I'm not a member of this particular group, so I don't really know what the hell this particular thing looks like, so I'm just going to go with you on the statement that this is problematic, because it doesn't hurt me to just admit it and take that shit down. Like,
yeah.
The first rule of getting out of a hole is to stop digging.
True, and for me it's like, thank you for deciding to educate me rather than be completely enraged at me.
Because you don't have to do
because
that.
that was your choice.
Yeah, so that really is what pushes her into the troll category. Is like, I could be forgiving if she just like thought it would be a funny tweet to post, and so didn't really think about it, because that whole like, especially Twitter culture is just made to just like post whatever shit pops into your head. So I could go with that if you didn't then like try to dig back in extra hard.
I deserve to appropriate this culture because my culture.
And what pushed this one over other trolls for the week was because I shared this story on my wall, and one of my gabies like just went off like, "Oh my god, thank you for posting this. I'm so sick of racism in queer culture." Like, I was like, I need to give this kid a blog.
You do.
This kid just needs to vent all of this shit out. Dory, I hereby dub you the queer Oprah. Now go out and give all gabies everywhere blogs.
Oh god, that's what I'm becoming with Shethinkers Productions.
For real.
I'm gonna be the queer Oprah. I'm alright with
you
this.
Get a blog, and you get a blog, and you get a blog. We all get a blog.
Look under your states. There's a blog.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. That is just what I want to do. Every gabie that rants at me, I'm like, let me give you a blog. I want you to write about this. Just rant and I'll publish it. It's cool. Oh, all right. Well, since this is Big Boo from Orange is the New Black, I'm pretty sure that Suzanne has something to say about this.
I will punch you! I will fuck you! Bitch, don't make me cut you! You don't know the fuck you are, bitch! You don't know me!
I threw my pie for you.
Yep. Seriously, Boo. You need to get your shit together. I mean, I was proud of you for canceling your appearance at Mitchfest, so that was cool, but, you know... Just because you succeed in one area doesn't mean you're okay in everywhere.
Exactly, and I'm hoping that, you know, she'll realize this is an educational moment, if anything, and then move on.
Yep, we all fuck up. You just gotta learn from your fuck ups and move on, right?
Exactly.
All right. So the boss for this week. Scientists have created sperm from female embryos. Yay! Yeah! Which means that men are obsolete and we don't need them anymore. So...
We need much for to begin with.
So, time to round up all the men and create our lesbian utopia, right?
I don't know. I mean, I think I might want to keep around at least a few as decorative pieces.
We can have them for labor and decorative pieces.
They've got aesthetic value to me.
Yeah, you know.
Could put them off on a prison island, you know, like that one guy says we should do with the gays.
Oh, and not just female embryos, but also bone marrow. So,
dang, we don't even have to stem cell this.
For those of us who can't contribute embryos, we could still contribute bone marrow, so we got it covered, man. It's just we don't need dudes for sperm anymore, which is pretty badass. That's all I got, really. Like,
I mean, it's a pretty awesome thing. Not gonna lie.
Hooray! Lesbians can have genetically related children now. That's pretty badass.
Indeed.
All right. Well, I guess that means it's time to talk about PTSD. Woohoo!
I don't know if I can woohoo, but I will jump on this ride.
Well, I guess to get started, should we define trauma first, or should we define PTSD first? Well,
let's define trauma first.
Yeah, I like that.
For those who don't know, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, so trauma is an integral part of PTSD. So, okay, let's define trauma. I'm trying to remember what all the DSM criteria are. Your life has to be in danger, or... Okay, hang on, I'm pulling it up. Okay, so... Trauma is exposure to an event that meets a real or imagined threat to your life, real or imagined sexual assault. What else am I forgetting, Caitlin? Sorry, I'm a little drunk, so you're gonna have to help me out.
Sorry, I was looking up some stuff here. Say those again.
Okay, real or imagined harm, real or imagined death, real or imagined sexual trauma or sexual abuse. Anything else that I'm forgetting that qualifies as trauma?
Witnessing any of those?
Yeah, and you don't have to directly be involved with that. You can witness it or indirectly witness it, and if it is sufficiently... I don't want to say traumatic, because that's just using the definition in the definition.
Severe? Yeah,
if it's severe enough, then you have the potential to have PTSD. Although, throwing some statistics out there, only 10% of people who experience trauma develop PTSD symptoms, which I guess is a good thing.
Yeah, but I think the important thing to remember is that the trauma threshold is different for everybody.
It is.
It's very unique. So to say, like it has to be severe, everybody's severe is a totally different level.
Exactly.
And another thing, and this is one of the ones that's in here, is it doesn't have to be, like, when they say 10% of people exposed to trauma have a chance, and that's like a single traumatic incident. If you've got repeated, you're more likely. So, like, children who grow up abused, or...
Now, children who grow up abused, who then experience marital abuse, who,
Or like the example in here, they have like first responders who are regularly seeing massive, like horrible deaths, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Some interesting things when it comes to like, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this, like a massive trauma, like let's say a natural disaster or something like that, or victims of war, or things that affect a lot of people. There has been counseling practices where it's basically like debriefing people who have been through those experiences, and that will greatly reduce the chance of getting PTSD.
Yeah, because you don't have a chance to repress it.
Exactly. I guess this is a good time to just jump into defining PTSD now, because the whole avoidance factor is kind of what eggs on PTSD. So, shall we go?
Well, it's two factors. It's the recurrence or the intrusions of the trauma again in some format, and the avoidance. So you've got two aspects to it.
Well, and the shitty thing about brains when it comes to avoidance and recurring thoughts is that by trying to avoid a memory, you're actually more likely to re-experience that memory. Precisely. Because you have to think about a memory in order to repress it, so then you're just thinking about it more. So then you get this weird feedback loop.
Yep.
So that's shitty.
Indeed, it can be very life altering. It can like take the quality of your life and just kind of send it on the spiral down.
Yeah, it's similar to other feedback loops that happen with other mental illnesses, where it just kind of exacerbates itself. Like rumination in depression, where if you can't stop the rumination, it just gets worse and worse as it keeps going. PTSD has that sort of same feedback cycle too, so yeah, brains are shitty sometimes.
Scumbag brain.
Scumbag brain. Should we... I guess let's get into the criteria for PTSD now. Now, Caitlin and I were trained under the DSM-4, so now we're like relearning the DSM-5 criteria, which is, I think they did a lot of changes in the DSM-5, but I think there were good changes that needed to happen.
If I'm not mistaken, weren't most of them like categorical? Like a lot of things shifted categories.
Yeah, PTSD is one of the mental illnesses that got the most changes, but mostly because it needed to happen, because there were a lot of people who really should have qualified that weren't qualifying.
Yeah, I was one of them.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they expanded it, because...
it used to be like 3 specific criteria, and now it's 8.
Yeah, so it's broken down more.
Or 3 categories of criteria, I should say.
The old 3 categories were, if I remember...
Trauma.
Yeah, well, you had to experience trauma. There had to be...
the intrusive... You had to have 2 intrusive symptoms, and you had to have 2 avoidance symptoms.
Yeah, so you had to have avoidance and re-experience. And I guess hypervigilance was kind of mixed in with the avoidance.
Yeah. Take a drink.
Yeah. So, now they've broken it up into 8 different criteria, which, again, the definition of trauma was expanded. I think originally it had to be direct exposure, and now it has witnessing
I think witnessing
trauma.
a person was in the original, too.
Yeah, I think that indirect and repeated indirect were added for DSM-5.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what it was added to that.
So now, like, first responders can qualify for PTSD, where originally they didn't qualify. So yeah, you can have direct exposure, witnessing in person, indirectly witnessing, and then repeated or extreme indirect exposure. So that would be the first responders and things like that. Or, repeated incidences of child abuse or what have you. But I believe they still have to be in person in some way or another. Like, you can't experience trauma by viewing things on a TV or something.
No, but I think for like mass events, don't they have like another diagnosis?
I think they do for like if you have symptoms from, let's say, like 9/11 or something like that. I think that's its own.
Exactly.
Well, no, not that, but like going back to what you're saying, like you can't just watch it on TV. That's actually one of the categories that they added in was indirect. Of you can learn just like just someone that I knew was exposed to trauma, and if it was like actual or threatened death, it had to have been violent or accidental. So like,
well, I
in my case with the military, I got to watch people dying. Like it's basically on a TV. It's a video game to a lot of these guys.
Well, yeah, but you were like connected with them in identity some way, being a service person.
Well, they were the opposing forces.
Okay.
But like, it has on number 4 of the stressor criteria. It does say it doesn't include. This says non-professional exposure. So, a civilian watching something on TV is not the same thing.
No, it's
as
not.
what you're experiencing.
You have a much deeper understanding and connection and identity.
You had professional exposure.
Yeah.
This explicitly says non-professional exposure.
Yeah.
So, non-professional exposure through electronic media doesn't count, but
watching violent movies is not going to give you PTSD.
Exactly. Like that's all that's going on with this. So then the next criteria is intrusive symptoms. So those are intrusive memories, recurring thoughts,
traumatic nightmares.
Yeah.
There's also they call it dissociative reactions now instead of flashbacks.
I think it's probably a good thing because I think especially with like the media, people have this weird idea of what flashbacks are, and they're not accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they've also added a continuum for what they could be, from like just a very, very brief episode to complete loss of consciousness and.
Yeah. And they do have, we're specifically talking about the adult criteria, but there are children's criteria for PTSD as well.
And they're mislisted on here. The one that we've got linked in our thing here from the National Center for PTSD. It's got for the nightmares, children having nightmares may not have content related to the trauma, whereas with adults, it's usually going to be reliving the trauma in some way.
Yeah. So children's nightmares might be, more abstract than adult nightmares are going to be.
Sure, because they're processing it in an entirely different way.
Yeah. And the dissociative reactions, flashbacks one, and that one may be children reenacting the event through play.
Yeah. One case study that Caitlin probably dealt with too. And
Dr. Rubens.
Yeah, and Dr. Rubens was about children who had PTSD, and they were reenacting the abuse that they witnessed their mother experiencing in their play.
They'd gone through it too, because their father had basically taken the whole family hostage and was tying her up and all that, and one of the kids ended up like reenacting it by tying other kids up.
Or tying up their stuffed animals, so kids process things differently than adults do, so there's going to be a different set of criteria for children. But you're still going for the same basic wide criteria, I guess. It's just the details are going to be a bit different.
Yeah.
And then the last two types that they have for intrusive are intense or prolonged distress after exposure to traumatic reminders. So this is where triggers come in.
Oh boy.
And then,
well, it's not just triggers, it's specifically ones that are really, really intense triggers, or they just last for long periods of time.
Yeah. But
this isn't like just, that makes me uncomfortable.
No, it's like that sends me into a full-fledged panic, and I'm going to try to get away from it, and I might not be able to come down even after I do.
And that goes along with this last one, which is physiological reactivity.
Oh, gosh.
And anyone who's been triggered before, I've experienced triggering before, and like, my whole body shakes, and my heart just, like, races a mile a minute, and...
Yeah, shakes, the racing, for me, breath control is a big thing, like, trying to get that.
It's one of the few times I'll break into tears. Like, not like crying, like I'm good, proper sobbing, but just like tears streaming down my face just because the intensity of it.
I've actually shut myself into closets and rocked back and forth.
So, I guess we'll talk about triggers specifically a little bit later, but that's one of the things that triggers are related to, is the intrusive symptoms.
Yeah.
Because triggers are intrusive. Like,
yeah, it's not like you chose to do this
you
right now.
don't choose to be triggered by things.
You do not. That's why it's a trigger.
Because being triggered is pretty fucking awful, so it's the last thing that you want to have happen. But if it's related to the trauma that you experienced, it can kind of kickstart the whole physiological reaction again. Because the PTSD is all tied into the fight or flight system of your hormones and adrenaline and everything else. And so it's just like, when you get triggered, it just kind of kickstarts that whole thing. Even if you're sitting at home on the computer and you're clearly not in a position where you're actually being threatened, it doesn't matter because your body still responds in that physiological way. Which sucks. So, yeah. I guess now we don't really have... Well, let's talk about avoidance.
Avoidance used to be a much larger category, and that's the one that got broken into it because they've gotten together several ones.
So now avoidance is just trying to avoid either trauma-related thoughts or feelings or trauma-related external reminders. So depending on what your trauma is, like a common thing that veterans who have PTSD is avoiding crowds.
Oh gosh.
Because crowds can be an external reminder. And so that could be one thing, or just trying to avoid the thoughts or feelings associated with that. So
another real common one for combat veterans is like fireworks, firecrackers, all that from like 4th of July and all that.
Which
let's celebrate our freedom by blowing
triggering veterans.
Blowing stuff up and triggering veterans.
Fourth category used to be part of avoidance, and now it's its own section for negative alterations in cognitions and mood.
Yeah, so a lot of these are going to be similar to depression and other negative mental illnesses, but when you're trying to find a diagnosis for somebody, you're trying to be concise with your diagnosis. So a lot of mental illnesses have overlap in them. This is a common problem, I guess, when it comes to diagnoses, is trying to find the most concise diagnosis that you can, which means depending on what you tell your therapist and your therapist's biases and conceptions and things like that, you can get different diagnoses from different therapists because of the overlap in
and still
criteria.
Have the same thing all along.
Yeah.
Because that's been my experience. I've had 5 to 6 different diagnoses over the years for the same thing.
It happens with medical doctors too. A lot of things have overlapping symptoms, like fever. Can be anything.
Exactly.
Just about any virus that gives you a fever.
Yeah, so...
Or infection in general.
Depressive symptoms, for example, is like the fever of mental illness, where there's a shit ton of things that cause depressive symptoms. But then you have to tease out, like, is this major depressive disorder? Is it dysthymia? Is it PTSD? Is it bipolar disorder? What's going on here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it adjustment disorder?
So, fun.
The first one of these is you can kind of see how this used to be with avoidance, and the first one is the inability to recall key features. So it's like sort of amnesia.
Yeah. And what's weird about this is there used to be this conception that if you experience something traumatic, then you would remember everything in that event in perfect clarity. And that's not how memory works. It's not how the brain works when it comes to like sensory input during the event. There's a lot of things that we know now that we didn't during DSM-4, where, for example, if a weapon is present during a traumatic event, you tend to focus on the weapon rather than anything else that's going on, because that's the biggest threat to you, so that's what you're going to focus on. So when people are like, how could you forget your rapist's face or whatever, it's because you're more focused on other things than you are their face or something else in particular. So we've kind of dropped the whole you should be able to recall everything with perfect clarity, because that's just not how memory works or sensory input works. Brains don't work that way.
Nope.
So I'm glad that that's not nearly as essential as it used to be in the DSM-4.
Well, it wasn't in a TR. It wasn't in there. That was still one of the avoidance symptoms.
Yeah, but because the way that DSM-4 used to be is that in the avoidance you had to have, I think it was like 3 criteria, and now it's just 1. And so it was harder.
Well, they broke avoidance into 3 different categories. It's now avoidance, the negative emotions, and then the next one.
Yeah, so now inability, amnesia is not going to be as big a deal in the DSM-5 as it used to be in the DSM-4. Because now you've got that criteria spread out. You know what I mean? Because now...
The next one in...
Yeah.
No, yeah, just... Well, it was always in there. That was always one of that specific one was always one, at least for 4, was one of the criteria. I distinctly remember that one.
Yeah. But now
because that's one of mine.
It's diluted, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
The next criteria, the next part of this section is persistent and often distorted negative beliefs and expectations about yourself or the world. I am bad, the world is completely dangerous. One I always had as a kid was, I'm not going to live to see 30.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which, depending on how you look at things, I don't know if it's necessarily distorted negative beliefs, depending on what you've experienced.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know at the time I didn't want to see 30.
Yeah. So, again, this is kind of up to the therapist's discretion, I guess, as to what qualifies as a distorted negative belief. But...
And what Dory was getting at with me was with the not living to 30 thing is, as a trans woman, that's the median age to live to.
Yep.
Gotcha.
If you live past 30, you've beaten the odds as a trans woman. So when I have my 30th birthday, it's going to be a hooray, I beat the odds party.
It's going to be a celebration.
Yes. I already had one on my 25th birthday. It was my hooray, I probably don't have hereditary mental illness party. So
nice.
You got to find milestones after you get past 21, right?
Of course. My 31st birthday was, hey, I'm just doing what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yay! High five.
My 25th birthday was, hey, I can rent a car on my own now.
Yeah, that's all you got when you're 25, right? Alright. So the next one is persistent distorted blame of self or others for causing the traumatic event or for resulting consequences. Yeah. So, I don't know, I was never diagnosed with PTSD, but sometimes when I look back on a particular part of my childhood, I'm fairly certain that I had a lot of symptoms of PTSD back then. It was after I was sexually assaulted, which is the most common cause of PTSD.
Indeed.
And this definitely plays into that, because I had a lot of internalized victim blaming as a result of being sexually assaulted.
And sure, and our culture completely supports and abets that.
Right. And I had the hypervigilance thing a lot, too.
Oh, yeah.
Take a drink.
That was when I overcompensated by trying to act as masculine as possible, because I thought if I acted really masculine, then I wouldn't be sexually assaulted again. Because that's what I blamed that's what I blamed on being sexually assaulted. I was like, well, if I didn't act so girly, then I wouldn't have been sexually assaulted. Yeah.
That's what you get for being a girl.
Yeah, basically. So, I had a lot of shitty internalized things back then, but...
Yeah. Well, and going off that whole of you may or may not have had it, there's actually different categories of, post-PTSD, like what they use for categorization and treatment and all that. Like, mine's not technically PTSD, it's like post-traumatic stress syndrome or something.
Yeah.
Like, very slightly different, just because, like, in my case, it was long-term exposure to trauma rather than a singular event.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, well, part of the PTSD family.
Yep. The next one is persistent negative trauma-related emotions. So, fear, horror, anger, guilt, shame.
Yeah, and persistent is kind of the key word there. If you're constantly experiencing these feelings, obviously that's going to have a negative effect on your cognitions and mood.
Clearly.
So, yeah. Then we have markedly different diminished interest in pre-traumatic significant activities. So, if you want your fancy college-educated word for this, it's anhedonia, which is also a symptom of depression. And it's a depressive symptom.
It's like,
but
I don't like to do the things I used to.
Yeah, that's all that anhedonia means, is you don't like doing the things that you used to like doing. Because you just can't bother being interested in it anymore.
Yeah, Harry Potter doesn't interest me anymore after the war.
Oh, that sucks.
That's a travesty.
I'm joking on that. Harry Potter still interests me.
Okay.
I lost
bedtime stories.
I lost interest in writing for quite a lot of time, and that's like breathing to me. So
yeah.
I
have it back and forth sometimes with video games, and Dory will tell you I'm a huge gamer.
Well, and I would think that video games can potentially be really triggering depending on the video game in question. So
absolutely.
There's a reason I don't play, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, any of those.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why I don't Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. So, luckily they don't have a lot of graphic depictions of sexual assault, I guess, but I don't know, they also...
There was the rape game.
Yeah. What the fuck is up with video games sometimes, man?
Well, if I were to speak from media theory, there is a theory that's basically cathartic effects.
Yeah.
And it would say that because you're getting out those emotions while you're playing, you're less likely to do it. But if we were going to, and that's harder to prove, but if we were going to scale this back even further, I can't remember his name right now, but there was a professor at UTA 2 years ago who did a time use effect study, and basically if you're inside fake murdering people, you are like barely likely to be out in the streets real murdering people.
Yeah. Studies about violent video game use time and time again don't show positive correlation with actually being violent. They do have other negative effects, but like recreating the same things that you're doing in the video games is not one of them. Thinking less of women when there's sexism in video games has been proven, and other related things like that has been shown.
Certainly.
But another thing is there's actually been a lot of use of video games and virtual reality in PTSD treatment.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
a lot of other treatments, like Alzheimer's.
Yeah. One of the things in neuropsychology, there's two different states of viewing your memories, basically, and there's the field effect and the observer effect. And the field effect is you directly experiencing whatever it is that you're experiencing, and the observer is like above everything, kind of experiencing it, detached, sort of, and having that observer standpoint or viewpoint is actually more likely to have PTSD symptoms rather than being in the field point of view where you're directly experiencing it when you remember it. So the way that virtual reality is used in that particular instance is forcing you to be in the field point of view rather than the observer point of view. because processing the traumatic event is part of therapy for PTSD.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good segue into our next couple symptoms, which, because they were both detachment related. One is feeling alienated from others, and they straight up say detachment or estrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is the fancy term is constricted affect, or persistent inability to experience positive emotions. In other words, you're detached from your emotional stuff, aside from those negative trauma-related ones of fear, horror, etc.
Yeah, it's a little different from depression. It's just that you can't experience positive emotions.
Yeah, which is one that I do have, and I'm actually, to give you an idea, I've had people straight up tell me that I'm like a robot. They will do everything they could to push my buttons to get those negative emotions just to get some kind of an emotional reaction.
Yeah. Fucking neurotypical people. What the hell?
Things neurotypicals do.
I don't even understand why you would do that. But all right, 5th criteria. I can't believe there's 8 criteria now. Although this is kind of a good thing because
this is the last actual one. The rest are
the others are qualifications. I guess.
Yeah, duration and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So this one is alterations in arousal and reactivity, and this goes into hypervigilance, which we've talked about. Take a drink. Trauma-related alterations in arousal and reactivity that begin or are worsened after the traumatic event. So this can be irritable or aggressive behavior.
Check.
Self-destructive or reckless behavior.
Check.
Check.
And this is something that self-medication comes into with the reckless behavior. Like alcoholism is very common amongst PTSD, or drug abuse and other forms of self-medication are really common.
Driving recklessly.
Yeah. There's hypervigilance. Take a drink.
Take a drink.
Exaggerated startle response.
Oh god, dude.
Yeah.
Blah, blah.
Yeah. You guys want to go into exaggerated startle response?
Let me explain. It is only in the past year, and even now I still have to medicate, where if I live in a building where there are people above me being loud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I cannot sleep, I cannot think, I cannot anything but shake. And then I have to walk around the entire premises.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to go back in and then look into people's windows if it's an apartment building, and then I can maybe go back to sleep after I've taken a Klonopin.
I can give 2 good examples of this as well for mine. One was after I got out at my civilian job. Before I'd even moved to Texas, I was working at a Sears in the receiving department where we kept all the big stuff and would wheel it out to people. And I was wheeling a fridge or something big and heavy on a dolly and going backwards. And one of my coworkers comes up behind me and is like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I jumped a foot in the air, spun around real quick, and he's like, "Holy crap, I gotta startle you more often." Fucking neurotypicals.
How about not, dude?
Yeah, how about you don't trigger me? Thanks, brah.
But another example, going off the one that Kate did, was I had gotten... I was in my reserves, and I was usually the first one showing up at the unit in the mornings. So I show up there first thing, and the door's already open, and not unlocked, just ajar. So before I can do any work, I'm going through the whole building, checking every room, and I got in trouble for it because A, they still thought I was a guy, and B, the person who had come in before and hadn't unlocked the door proper, had just gone in, was in the women's room changing. And I didn't see her, but they're like, "Oh, you went in to peek on her." I'm like, no, I was checking the whole area to make sure it was safe, that we weren't being robbed or something.
I was casing the perimeter.
Yeah.
And the interior.
Well, I was doing it in the interior.
Yeah.
So... our next one is problems in concentration, which goes into those.
Yeah.
And sleep disturbance.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, sleep disturbance can go in either direction. So it can either be sleeping way more than you usually do or not getting enough sleep. It can be either one.
And you know, it
can be both.
Yeah, it can be either one on two completely different nights that are back to back.
Yep.
It can be both on the same night. One of the ones I regularly have is problems falling asleep, problems staying asleep. And so it's 12, 16 hours for me to feel actually rested.
Yep.
Of time from when I go to bed to before I finally get up and I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Well, yeah, if you never hit REM.
Yeah. And then, like we said, the other criteria are just like duration, which is that all this stuff has to last longer than 1 month. And then typical stuff of all mental illnesses, it has to cause you significant amount of distress and functional impairment, and it can't be due to medication, substance abuse, and other things. So those are all common in pretty much every mental illness. So, yeah, you kind of, those are the defining factors of a mental illness. If it doesn't cause you distress, then it's not a mental illness.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine, then you're fine.
All right. Well, given that, I think now's a good time to go to commercial so we can get new drinks and pee and whatnot. And then when we come back, we'll talk about PTSD some more. So,
woo!
For what we know is right.
What's up? This is Dory.
And the Dirty Nerdy.
As you probably know, Be Secular is a proud sponsor of Secular Shethinkers.
But did you know the owners, Shannon and Mark, are not just sponsors, but also fans?
That's right, and we're fans of theirs too, because Be Secular doesn't just sponsor Shethinkers.
They sponsor lots of podcasts, artists, and organizations that support equality and the separation of church and state.
And we're all about equality and the separation of church and state.
They donate up to 50% of the profits to us as long as you go to besecular.com/shethinkers.
So be you. And be secular. Again, that's besecular.com/shethinkers.
Hey folks, this is your co-host Dirty Nerdy, here to talk to you about Audible.com. Did you know Audible has nearly 200,000 titles for you to choose from? They've got everything. Fiction, bestsellers, periodicals, you name it. And because you're our listener, you get a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook just by going to audibletrial.com/shethinkers. And we get $15 for every listener who signs up. Yay!
Woo!
This week we personally recommend The Purity Myth, How America's Obsession with Virginity is Hurting Young Women. Jessica Valenti argues that the country's intense focus on chastity is damaging to young women. Through in-depth cultural and social analysis, Valenti reveals that powerful messaging on both extremes, ranging from abstinence curriculum to Girls Gone Wild infomercials, place a young woman's worth entirely on her sexuality. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/shethinkers. Again, that's audibletrial.com/shethinkers for any free audiobook of your choice.
Planned Parenthood believes in the fundamental right of each individual throughout the world to manage his or her fertility, regardless of the individual's income, marital status, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, national origin, or residence. They believe that respect and value for diversity in all aspects of their organization are essential to well-being. They believe that reproductive self-determination must be voluntary and preserve the individual's right to privacy. They further believe that such self-determination will contribute to an enhancement of the quality of life and strong family relationships. To donate your time or money, or to utilize their services, go to PlannedParenthood.org. Remember, for every dollar you donate to Planned Parenthood, Jesus blesses an aborted fetus. Ah, shit. I'm used to the commercials being longer.
Oh, did we go dead?
I asked how long it was.
Oops.
Oopsie doodle.
Well, we're back.
I've been back. Although I don't think you guys could hear me.
No, you were muted, unfortunately. That's fine, I'll edit it when we re-release. Shall we talk about coping strategies?
Sounds good, since we had a question about that.
Oh, well, there we go. So, I guess this will be coping strategies besides therapy, which is, you know, as a future therapist, is going to be my personal recommendation, but not everybody can afford therapy or has access to therapy or what have you, so let's jump in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm leaving this up to you guys.
Okay. Well, for me, actually, something a therapist recommended at some point that doesn't require a lot of oversight, that could be an effective coping strategy if someone's not in that position, was mindfulness meditation, because you can, you know, I mean, it stems from the Zen tradition, but you can take out any religious elements and essentially make it all about just focusing on being in the moment despite whatever craziness is going on in your physiology and your mind.
Yeah, we did mindfulness stuff with my martial art. I actually had a therapist trying with that with me, and I'm like, yeah, the mindfulness stuff, I've already got that.
Mindfulness is pretty common in a lot of different treatments, actually, so...
Yeah, it's ACT specifically as well.
Yeah. But it makes sense given the whole, again, like, point of view and things like that, being in the present is something that isn't necessarily common with people with PTSD, so...
Well, it's very hard to remain there, so
yeah.
Learning techniques and practices that can help keep you there are great.
Yeah.
One that I do is basically what we're getting into our next topic of knowing my triggers and avoiding them. So, like in my case, I know people behind me will set me off, being crowded will set me off, certain sounds will set me off. So, you know, in classes, for example, where I can't avoid too large of a crowd, I sit in the back row where people can't get behind me, and I sit near an opening, so if I feel too crowded, I can get out real easily.
Yeah, and it's good to avoid whatever you can. I certainly try to avoid living on the ground floor. I try to avoid situations where I feel uncomfortable sexually, obviously. But, you know, some triggers I just can't avoid. Like, if they're, like, you know, for me, if I'm around a guy that I'm, like, very physically attracted to, because of my issues, just the fact that I'm physically attracted to this person, and this person is in, like, my, you know, like, 10-foot square radius, I might start getting triggered. It's weird. I mean, like, you know, I can't fix that. So I've had to learn to mindfulness through it, or you know, medicate through it, because there was just no other way. Like, I had to work with this dude, you know?
Yeah, my most common trigger is, shouting men. Like, angry male voices, especially shouting angry male voices, is like my, like, that's a guaranteed trigger. Like, I can't not experience that and not just, like, break the fuck down. And so, of course, as irony would have it, my fiance is a loud dude. So that's fun, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's different levels of how much it triggers. I mean, for me, just men in general can be triggering, but it's, you know, one, unfamiliar guys is kind of nervous. Two, it's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Three or more, it's like, fuck it, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, like, I know that I'm not going to experience with my fiance the same things that I have experienced from other men who got angry and shouted at me, but you still have that physiological response against your will that happens when you're triggered. So
exactly, and for me, not every man that I happen to be attracted to is going to assault me, but, you know, in the case of, you know, because of how my disorder knitted up, it's still like it's just a trigger.
It's not personal.
Yeah, it's not personal. There's just a lot I have to work through, and it just really sucks, because you'll be attracted to someone and they'll be into you, and then you're like, I have to avoid you, I have to shut you down, I have to be a jerk to you now, and I'm going to be.
So, avoiding triggers and mindfulness. Any other recommendations for coping?
Breathing techniques. I know Kate mentioned that earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of deep breaths.
Relaxation techniques?
Yeah, like relaxation techniques. You know, there's breathing, there's, I used to have, like, all those little stress balls and stuff like that I would just start squeezing whenever I would get too stressed out.
I have a muscle tension, like, technique I learned in a guided meditation that I still use. So I'll, like, tense them all very specifically and then relax and then release them.
I've done that sometimes. It's a good relaxation technique. I guess we've talked about triggers kind of throughout the show because they kind of can't avoid talking about them. Do we want to go in depth on those? Do we feel pretty confident about that?
I'm okay either way.
Yeah.
Basically, triggers are things that remind you somehow, either like consciously or just physiologically, of the trauma and set off panic attacks or other symptoms.
Well, since we've kind of established what triggers are, do we want to talk about trigger warnings?
Okay.
Because that is, for whatever reason, tends to be controversial in some circles, and I don't understand that shit, because I don't know how, like, 2 or 3 words at the beginning of something that you're about to read is supposed to ruin your reading, or whatever people's objections to trigger warnings are. I don't understand it.
I don't know. I mean, the only people I ever see objecting to a trigger warning are people who don't want to create a safe space.
Yeah.
And I think that it's the purview of the editor or the author of the piece to decide whether or not there's a safe space. Period. I mean, like, you don't need to get upset that an editor decided there's going to be a safe space here. You don't need to be upset that a writer decided there's going to be a safe space here. And if someone in the comments is calling for a trigger warning, it is still the purview of the editor or the writer to then amend.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been in a situation where something that I've written that should have had a trigger warning didn't have a trigger warning. But if I ever was in that position, I wouldn't then try to interrogate the person who asked for it. I would just, like, how long does it take to edit your piece and put a trigger warning at the top? Like, 2 seconds. I don't understand, like, what the inconvenience is for people.
Well, if the writer really doesn't believe that there should be a safe space, or doesn't believe in safe spaces, or doesn't want to create one, then, I mean, at least for me, I respect their right, but I'm probably not going to read much more of what they write.
Yeah. And what's weird is it's usually not writers or editors who object to it. It's just, I don't know, like, dudes on the internet who seem to object to trigger warnings.
Dudes on the internet object to a lot of things. That doesn't mean they're going to get their way. I'm sorry. Just because you're a male age 18 to 35 doesn't mean your opinion has more weight than mine, even if it does in other arenas, okay? Just because Gum and Nuts works in marketing doesn't mean that you get to change my blogs. Sorry, brah.
Oh, man. Nice Simpsons reference. But yeah, like, I don't know, the things that I usually put trigger warnings for are violence, bullying, sexual assault, weight-related things.
Sure.
I feel like those are the most common triggers, and if I miss something, then I put it in there after.
Sometimes race, ethnic, and
slurs in general.
And sometimes I'll use language that I don't realize is a slur. Like, I've over the past couple of years, I've really been called out on my ableism.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that people have taken the time out to educate me on it.
Yeah, I find that as I try to remove ableist slurs, I just end up swearing a lot more because that doesn't hurt anybody. So
yeah, well, what kind of culture do we live in when it's like considered more societally acceptable to hurt a segment of people by associating a negative thing with them than it is just to come out and be negative?
Then just be like, you're a fucking asshole. Like, that really is what I end up doing more now, because I don't want to use ableist slurs, and so instead I just end up being like, you're a fucking douchebag, you're full of shit, you know, like... Well, it may not be sophisticated, but at least I'm expressing my anger in a way that doesn't marginalize a whole group of people.
Exactly. I mean, like I've had such a hard time excising the L word, the lame word from my vocabulary, because I want to call everything that, and I'm like, can it really not walk? You know, does it really have mobility problems?
Yeah. I mean, even on this show, we used to call our shitty sexist song the stupid sexist song.
Oh, yeah, and there's oh gosh, I mean, when I actually look at Stanford Binet and I look at all of those IQ, you know, designations and mental ability designations crosshatched with eugenics and its terrible legacy, there's just no justification.
Yeah, so, I mean, trying to remove... And ableist slurs seem to be the most socially acceptable out of all of them, you know? Like,
well, just look at our
they're
society.
So ingrained in society.
Well, you know, the more paper representation of wealth you accumulate, or the more anything representation of wealth you accumulate through your quote unquote ability, whether or not it's connected to it, is your measure of success.
Hooray, capitalism.
I mean, I don't know. You know, I've done a lot of reading lately in capitalism, socialism. I don't know. There's a lot I could support under either umbrella with a lot of reform that makes it a more even playing field. Period.
But the whole, like, your earning is tied to your worth as a person.
Bullshit. In fact, just no. Number one, no. And number two, you know, that's why I consider it my mission, and I'm currently working on the Anti-Atlas Shrugged. And I've got about 2,200 words written.
Nice.
It's pretty good so far.
Oh man, I need to get into my short stories that I want to work on. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna publish it under Shethinkers Productions when I'm done.
Awesome.
I'm excited.
You're awfully quiet, Caitlin.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I don't do a lot of writing, so.
That's okay.
Tell us about your
I totally
pastime.
Tell you about my what?
Tell me about your pastime.
Gaming, fitness, you name it.
Beautiful.
Yay.
And 3 annoying and adorable cats.
Aw, kitten mommy.
I love my
I've got
babies.
2 of them in here with me.
Fur babies are the best.
Yep.
Yes, they are.
I love my grumpy old man cat. He's 18, man. He's like 100 in cat years or something.
He's your dirty old man.
He's my dirty old man.
Sometimes literally.
He tries to cop a feel if you're not paying attention.
Zoe will often fall asleep with her paw on my boob. Not that she even has seen it or gets anything from it, but it's just like, I'm gonna put this here. It makes me feel better.
I'm embarrassed to think about the number of times that I've woken up saying, "Baby, don't lick my boob." That's weird. Well, so trigger warnings, going back to the topic.
Yeah.
If bestiality is a trigger warning for you, sorry, trigger warning for Dory's cat.
So yeah, trigger warnings, I guess they started on feminist blogs, although I really don't think that they did. I feel like the advisory warning before shows is a triggery warning.
Sure.
The syllabus that you get in your class is a trigger warning for those who need it. It's why all of these articles that were like, have we gone too far with trigger warnings things, I'm just like, no.
No, I mean, you know, if we're going to have a society in which we do not repress the nature of content, I think it's only fair to be explicit about, you know, upfront.
Yeah.
About what's going to transpire in a space, period. I mean, you know, I would much rather have that than repression.
Yeah, I mean, I'm part of a Facebook group it's basically about creating trigger warning guides for shows and movies.
Yeah.
Like Orange is the New Black is the one that I can think of off the top of my head. Because at least Game of Thrones has that, like, parental advisory thing that goes on before it. So you can usually be like, oh, this has got rape in it, I'm out. And
boy, does it ever.
Yeah, not watch it. But with Orange is the New Black, you're not sure what's going to happen in the next episode. So you don't know, like, do I have the spoons to watch this episode? Or should I wait and not watch this until I'm in a better place?
Sure, and the thing with Orange is the New Black, I mean, it's directly selected content because it's part of on-demand content, so it's not even like, well, this came over my airwaves, how dare you?
Yeah. So, I don't think trigger warnings have gone too far. If anything, I think they need to be a little more...
Go farther?
Well, yeah, and what's goofy is if you don't need trigger warnings, you forget that there even was a trigger warning by the time that you're done. If you do need it, then you pay attention to it. Like, there are some trigger warnings that I look out for, and there are plenty of them that I don't look out for because they don't affect me in that way. And so, like, the parental advisory before a show, if it doesn't have something that I need to know about, I forget what it even said because I'm not paying attention. And I feel like that shouldn't be a big deal to have a trigger warning before something. I don't understand how it's supposed to spoil what you're watching or ruin the effect or whatever, which are the common complaints that are leveled against trigger warnings. Is that, oh, if I know a rape scene is going to be in this episode, it's going to ruin it for me.
I'm sorry your viewer experience was ruined because I need something very real and tangible to my life, okay?
Yeah.
But, your experience as someone who's appreciating media or art is not more important than my safety if someone desires to create a safe space.
Yeah, what I hear when people say that is, like, my desire to be entertained and surprised is more important than your desire for reasonable accommodations.
That sure sounds like a privileged attitude.
Right?
I mean, let's just call a spade here. That's max of privilege.
I don't know, like, I want your life, bro. If that's the worst thing you have to worry about is getting spoiled on your show, then...
Yep.
That must be a pretty sweet gig.
Let's trade these. You are on easy mode.
The whole easy mode, hard mode, whatever for life.
Hooray. Do you want to talk about wrestling with diagnoses? I guess we've touched on that a little bit through the show, but...
Sure.
Your therapist might not diagnose you with PTSD, even if you think what we've been talking about this whole time sounds like what you've experienced.
Well, sure, and I know that my process of self-discovery, I was having symptoms before I could, like, kind of piece everything together in a narrative that would let my therapist know that this is it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presenting with depressive symptoms that are then transitioning into anxiety. So they want to treat my depression first to see if they can stave off the anxiety, and then over a many-year journey with lots of labyrinths and monsters and all that other fun stuff, I eventually figure it all out. But it can be pretty frustrating when you keep going and getting new diagnoses on your journey to what you've actually got.
Yeah, and I guess. Coming at it from the other side, diagnosis isn't necessarily important for your therapist. It really depends on if they accept insurance, then diagnosis is going to be a more integral part of what they do, because you have to have a diagnosis in order to get therapy covered on your insurance. If your insurance does cover mental health, which all of them should, but that's another rant for another day. So, I feel like what I would do as a therapist would be like, look, this is what I'm going to put on your insurance claim because they need something, but let's not get hung up on this in particular.
Of course not. But the only way it really did concern me is because it really did affect my access to medication.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I found a lot of hung up. Because until I could find the appropriate, spot treatment anxiety, rather than let's have you on this boost bar, let's have you on this antidepressant, that were messing they were fucking up my Christmas.
Yeah.
Until I
Thank you for the MC Chris reference.
But until I could get to a point where it's okay, no, you have triggers, and once you've been triggered, you just need a little bit of this. It was a very, very, it was a very harried experience. I mean, it was not that great.
And my experience is that psychiatrists tend to be a lot more hung up on diagnoses than psychologists or therapists.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, it makes sense. They're coming from the medical world, but it's still irritating.
I have the one example that I've told Dory several times when I first started transferring into the VA and all that. And as a combat vet, they do a whole battery of post-combat treatment stuff before they ever treat me. They're like, okay, we're going to test for this. And they had me sit down for about 10 minutes or so with a psychiatrist. And at the end of the 10 minutes, he's like, yeah, you have PTSD, but not severe enough for us to do anything about.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Gotta love the, you have to love the internal medical system in the military, and then you have to love the VA on top of it. You really do. I won't talk about my one experience with the VA. I tried once, and I was done.
I have a lot of veteran friends, and I've never had any of my veteran friends or people who have to deal with the VA. I've never heard anything positive about the VA. Never have I heard anybody say, man, the VA sure is fantastic and gets what I need done in a reasonable amount of time.
I will say this. Air Force healthcare was probably better than the VA,
sure.
But my first duty station was an Army base.
Oh, God. Jesus, help your soul.
Yeah. The healthcare there was horrible. We had a guy who got a sinus infection. Their response was, here, wear this eye patch.
Oh, God.
At least they didn't just give him a shot of penicillin in the ass. That's the usual response.
No, here's the thing, is they did so little to it that it got up in his brain and killed him.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, and that's so typical. I had a dear friend who, basically, she was having lady pain and lady troubles.
And we all know that lady pain isn't real pain.
Well, not only that, but because of her lady troubles, it was it was an issue she eventually had to have a DNC for. But she kept gaining weight. So not only did she have we can't figure out what's wrong with you and we don't care, she also had her unit coming down on her for being out of, she wasn't even out of shape. She could still run, she could do everything, but she was out of proportion, and they were not thrilled with that. So until she could finally convince them to send her off post, which, they then diagnosed her immediately, she had quite a hard time. It was like a 5-year struggle.
Yeah, we all know about lady pain not being real pain.
Oh, of course
unfortunately.
Not. Yep.
I can't believe that we have Shethinkers has our own little Tumblr that's all about lady pain isn't real pain, and
sometimes it doesn't even have to be related to your lady parts. You
just
have to be a lady.
You just have to be a lady experiencing pain, and that's all it takes.
Mm-hmm. I could tell all sorts of things about my fun journey on that that arc.
God, we should just have an episode that's just lady pain isn't real pain.
All right.
We can just
I'll come back.
So, I guess we'll combine this segment with the shit neurotypical people say. How can people not be a douchebag to people with PTSD? What are some basic things that neurotypical people can do to accommodate people with PTSD?
Don't say just calm the fuck down already.
Yeah?
Yeah. And this is what I mentioned earlier when we were preparing for the show, and Dory has seen this several times, is, like I mentioned, one of my triggers is people behind me, and, being crowded and all that. So, sitting in a classroom where there's a lot of people, I have to sit back of the row, like far back row near an entrance. Those are the spots that all the slackers want. So it's not uncommon if I've got 2 classes that are back-to-back on opposite sides of campus, that I get to my second class and it's like all those seats are taken.
Can you get...
And, I'm polite about it. I'm like, yeah, it's like, can one of you move for me? I have PTSD. I need to sit back here. And I always get these glares.
And I guess to throw it out there, as somebody who's an ally, I guess, of people with PTSD or whatever, I don't know. Caitlin knows that I am an overachiever, front row sitting person.
Yes, she is.
But whenever I share classes with Caitlin, I still sit in the back row with her because
solidarity.
It's the least I can do.
But yeah, I mean, wouldn't you be able to go to your Office of Disabilities and get some sort of waiver to leave your first class 5 minutes early to avoid that?
I could, theoretically, but I had so much issues with the damn VA to get... Like, when I fell off a fucking ladder and got massive concussion to even get the right paperwork signed for them.
Yes, and I had problems with that too when I was going through ciprotoxicity. I was in a lot of pain, and nobody could give me a diagnosis, and it was all in my head and all this other stuff. But I still went to my Office of Disabilities and explained the situation. Like, they can't diagnose me, but there's something really wrong with me. Here's the paper trail. And while they couldn't do the official "here's your stamp" thing, they did advocate on my behalf to work with my teachers, and it's better if the office is talking to them than I am.
Yeah. And I had something like that going on with mine, because TWU had 2 separate disability forms. One was for physical disabilities, and one was for, like, learning disabilities.
Gotcha.
And mine was a brain injury, so they're like, fuck, which one do we do?
Right.
And so the doctors... Like, even that office didn't know which one. They're like, here, have both. Just send both off. And the doctor's office was like, oh, here's the mental health one. Well, I don't do this one, the learning disability. That's the psychologist. And he just kind of threw out the physical disability one with it. And
oh, boy.
Lovely.
Yeah. Pay attention to directions if we're giving you instructions about our fucking disabilities.
Every time we have one of these shit X people say segments, I feel like they're just general things that you should do regardless of what people's situations might be.
Yeah, how about, like, just don't be a dick?
Don't be a dick.
Let's just start there. If you had a thing, okay? If you had a problem, you've lived, okay? You're human. You've had a problem.
No matter who you are, you've had something.
It could be a shitty-ass white person problem. I don't care. You've had a problem, okay? Now, when you had this problem, what did shitty people do? Okay, so don't do that. What did awesome people do? Awesome people might have sat down and said, you know what, I don't understand why it's so important to you that your latte has exactly the right amount of foam on it, but I understand you are breaking the fuck down right now. So how about you take some deep breaths, and I'm going to be nice to you until you calm down. Okay, just apply that to any situation, and you'd be alright.
We should just play that before every shit X people do segment. Just do we want to get into some of the myths about PTSD?
Oh.
And feel free to jump in with more shit neurotypical people say about PTSD if these bring up any memories by any means. Alright, so our first myth is that everyone who experiences a life-threatening event will develop PTSD.
Bullshit!
Which we already talked about. Less than 10% of people develop PTSD who have experienced trauma. It goes up if you've had repeated trauma. If you've been re-victimized over and over again, then obviously every time your chances go up, but otherwise it's relatively uncommon.
Yeah, and there are genetic and environmental factors and all sorts of fun things, so it could be completely possible that you are fine and you never have a problem because of your trauma.
Yep. But, it's also possible for you to live a long life without ever developing cancer, and we don't think any better of those people than people who have cancer, so there's no reason to think less of people who have experienced PTSD than people who haven't experienced PTSD.
Precisely.
So, don't be a dick.
I will say for the sake of, history, though, at one point in time, people who did develop cancer were treated that way, though. So, awareness about all the problems should be.
Yeah, I mean, mental illness is still making its way through there, unfortunately. But, I didn't even think about the fact that PTSD has kind of had a number of different names throughout history.
Mm-hmm. Shell shock?
Yeah, shell shock and combat fatigue and plenty of other things. I guess that goes with the myth that only combat veterans have PTSD.
Bullshit.
Which is bullshit.
I had my PTSD before I joined the military.
Yeah, the most common trauma that causes PTSD is sexual assault.
And that's how I got mine, and I was even in the military.
So, yeah, combat veterans are not the only people that get PTSD, which you wouldn't think. You would think people would be able to acknowledge, but I think a lot of things that get proven wrong, so...
Yeah, well, I think that popular culture generally tends to tie the two, and, although, media effects theories show that, we have mixed effects and they aren't always strong, when the viewing populace doesn't have much information about the subject to begin with, they are very strong.
Yeah, definitely. Next myth, only weak people get PTSD. Which is tied in with only women get PTSD.
Oh, gosh, I'd love to.
Gotta love that,
yeah.
right?
Well, you can only get it in combat, but only women can get it.
Yeah.
That's like, how does that even work? Women see combat-like roles all the time, even though they aren't in combat, so I'm not saying that.
No, they are now.
We are now.
Oh, yeah, I know, but, they've been, ever since we've been taping down our boobs since the Revolutionary War to be soldiers, we have an American history of women in combat, so let's not forget that.
As long as there has been
American
combat...
history.
Yeah, as long as there has been combat, there has been women in combat.
Precisely. But I'm only familiar with the American one, obviously, which is why I cited it. But besides all that, it's like, I know I'm not the strongest person ever. I've been through a lot of things that have made me strong, and there are probably many ways in which I'm weak. But I didn't get PTSD because I'm weak. I got PTSD because I was traumatized.
Right? It's a weird kind of victim blaming where you're like, only weak people get PTSD. You're like, I think only people who've experienced trauma get PTSD. You're alive, so I don't think you're very weak. If you've experienced trauma and you're still kicking in whatever, state of being you are kicking still, kudos to you, really. But going back to the whole women get PTSD, women are diagnosed with PTSD more, but women are diagnosed more with pretty much every mental illness because women are more likely to seek treatment for mental illness than men are. Because
except for a few ones that are more male specific.
Like substance abuse, men are more likely to seek treatment for, and a few other select ones that men are more likely to seek treatment for. But for the most part, women are more likely to seek treatment, therefore they're more likely to get diagnosed. There's your explanation.
Pretty much.
Women are also more likely to be victims of sexual assault and other traumatic events.
Related to such, and violence, gendered violence, period. They're just more likely to be recipients of such.
So, it's not that women are weak and therefore more likely to get PTSD. It's just, we've seen some shit, man. We've experienced some things.
Yup.
It was war.
I don't know. I hope someday an enlightened humanity looks back on this period and considers it as such.
Can only hope. Alright. After a certain amount of time, I should be over my trauma.
Yeah, I bought into that one for a really long time.
Yeah. I've mentioned before that the thing I was traumatized by, I didn't even really remember until I was an adult years later. So, yeah, it can happen anytime after the trauma, and there's not Like, it's not like it just goes away after a certain amount of time. You need to treat that shit.
Sure, and even in the treatment, you can still have all sorts of variants of, dealing with it and relapse and everything else. What I've had to learn to do instead of having this expected time frame in which I should deal with it, is just learn to be kind to myself and do what works. Because I'm sorry for the coughing, but whenever I have a very bad episode, I know that the kinder I am to myself in it, and the better I comply with my treatment in it, the better off I'm going to reach that recovery phase sooner, even if I have a relapse.
Yep. I guess spinning off of that is, my trauma was so long ago, it's too late to do anything about it.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Well, this kind of makes me sad, because it's somebody who's denying themselves treatment because of how long ago their trauma was.
I was going to say, there's a lot of time between my second birthday and my 25th year of life. So, no. Because, in my experience, that stuff came up involuntarily, and I still had to deal with it anyway. Mm-hmm. So my suggestion would be, how about you deal with it while you still have some control over it?
Well, and there's evidence that the more time that there has been between the trauma and treatment, the more likely positive outcomes are, because you've probably already resolved some things leading up to it. So you should still seek out help if that's what you need. Like, it doesn't matter how long ago your trauma happened. If you're still experiencing symptoms from it, then it's okay to ask for help.
Well, that, what did we discuss before is the criteria of mental illness. This has to be impacting your life. Otherwise, it's not one. Mm-hmm. So if your life is being impacted,
then it's okay to ask for help.
Exactly.
This is a big one. I should be able to handle this myself.
Oy.
Yeah, that's what leads to the substance abuse.
Yeah, which I don't think that even was a criteria before, but if it wasn't, I'm glad it is now, because the self-medicating thing is definitely a sign, I guess.
I once had a very wise therapist say that, back in the day when your options were like nothing or lobotomy, self-medication is not always the worst thing, but we have better things now, and we should apply them.
Exactly. When it comes to self-medicating, there's even some pretty good research that's been done in why do certain groups of people gravitate towards certain kinds of self-medicating. Like, one that I read about recently was people with depression tend to gravitate towards cigarettes and tobacco.
Do they ever?
And they found a correlation that nicotine can raise serotonin levels, and serotonin levels are related to depression. So I was like, that's kind of cool.
I was going to say, I always, whenever I was on an SSRI, I smoked like a
chimney.
You bets.
Before I transitioned, I was super depressed, and I smoked quite a bit. So, yeah, there's definitely a correlation there. And there does seem to be, different types of mental illness seem to gravitate toward different kinds of self-medicating. So, if that's all you've got access to, it's still not good, but I guess it could be worse. I don't know.
Well, exactly. I'm not going to judge. My great friend Hector. He's a deported veteran, right? Mm-hmm. He got deported because he was in a car with drugs because he was medicating his own PTSD, and of course he wasn't a citizen, as didn't take the time to make him a citizen, and he's been deported years, and there are so many people who self-medicate, and I'm not one to judge at all. But there are better ways if you want to access them.
Another myth we've got is, I'm so anxious, I just need to process this trauma, and then I'll be fine.
Sure.
Yeah. I feel like this one's partially true.
I think you'll have better luck doing it with help.
Yeah. The the 3 phases that are most common with PTSD treatment are safety and coping, which is just like, how do I live with PTSD? Reviewing the traumatic memories, and that's what we talked about with the whole like observer versus field perspective. And then integrating what has happened and your coping strategies into your life so that you can move on with your life. So if the only thing you're trying to do is just process the trauma, then you're not really getting the other aspects in there, like how to calm yourself down when you feel like you're being triggered and other things that a therapist can help you with.
The fun behavioral stuff that will help you cope from here on out.
So, I mean, it's okay to see a therapist. Like, you don't have to do this on your own. It's okay to see a support group if you're not okay with a therapist, you know, like...
I mean, that's okay. Oh, Caitlin, did you want to say something? I don't want to talk too much.
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. And it's okay to seek out self-help as well, as long as it's not being destructive, and as long as you're not, you know, if you feel like you need the help, you shouldn't have a barrier that is yourself.
And then the last myth is about, I guess, like recurring memories or repressed memories. It's, if I didn't remember the abuse, then I don't have to process the trauma.
I think that's a lie.
Yeah, I mean, we've already talked about, like, surprise, here's some shitty memories you had put down. You can have PTSD systems where you don't even really remember the traumatic event itself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought, what I thought was depression and anxiety my whole life turned out to be very tied to an event.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's... I don't know. What the... Apparently Chris is dying in the back room somewhere.
Guess you better go check
Chris, no dying until she's on your healthcare.
Aww.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know, just seek help. Whatever kind of help you're comfortable with. Like, I'm not going to tell you that you have to see a therapist, otherwise it's worthless, because that's ridiculous. But if it's a support group of other people who've experienced the same thing, or it's one-on-one therapy, or self-help, or whatever, like, it's okay. You don't have to be Superman or Superwoman.
Yeah, and I know that at the times that I was not ready for one-on-one therapy or a support group, when I would read survivor stories, and I would read, you know, at least then I could sort of piece together a narrative that worked for myself.
Well, any last thoughts before we go to the shitty sexist song? Caitlin?
I got nothing.
Kate?
Wherever you are and whatever you're dealing with, if you're kind to yourself through it, you're going to have a better outcome than if you beat yourself up.
That's pretty good advice in general.
I say so.
All right. Time for a shitty sexist song.
Let's do it.
I know that I seem to say this every week, but I feel like this is the worst one yet. Yeah, so this is from the 60s. It is called Wives and Lovers by Jack Jones. And I feel like I don't even want to give it away. Let's just jump in.
Okay.
Caitlin, I don't know if you can pull up the lyrics from the show notes.
Do it now.
All right. Let's do this thing. Oh man.
Hey, little girl, comb your hair, fix your makeup.
Can we just stop with the little girl comment right after that?
Okay, we'll go ahead and table the appearance-based comments in connection with little girl and just focus on little girl. So what does it mean to keep someone in the diminutive clause or form?
And to infantilize grown women?
Certainly.
I mean,
who don't like it.
Who don't like it. I mean, Obviously there's a class of people who are down with that, but he's addressing women in general.
This is the 60s.
And referring to them as little girl, which is just creepy. I don't know. All right, let's keep going.
Soon he will open the door. Don't think because there's a ring on your finger, you needn't try anymore.
Oh, I hate this trope so much. The whole, now that you're married, you're just letting your appearance go bullshit.
So you'd better buy the correct brand of coffee so he doesn't leave or beat you.
This whole song is, you better stay attractive, otherwise your man's gonna leave you. It's fucking weird. I don't know how to deal with this.
Well, you know what generally, the whole monogamist problems to begin with. I mean, do we need to start there? Because, whatever. Okay, so let's presume that monogamy is a desired state that these people both want, and let's presume that they're both trying to achieve it. Wouldn't it be the responsibility of dos personas?
You would think that. You would think, like, hey, little boy, don't put your dick in people you're not married to, would also be the equivalent of this song.
One would assume.
Yeah, but Dory, I challenge you to make that song. Write that song and have that be an Easter egg one week.
Just sing like a lounge singer-esque shitty sexist song towards men. A misandry
Creeping
song.
misandry for the win.
A misandry song. Hey, little boy, keep your dick in your pants.
Don't pull it out for the cocktail waitress.
Alright, let's keep going.
The wife should always be lovers too. Run to his arms the moment he comes home to you. I'm warning you.
Oh yeah, I'm warning you. Don't marry him just for the money. Don't be a gold digger. You have to love him.
Well, more than that, it's like, even if you did, keep pretending.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the whole run to his arms the moment he comes home to you. Bitch, I'm not home, I'm at the grocery store.
Your whole life should revolve around your man, ladies.
Well, yeah, he's the one opening the door. He's the one with agency. I mean, let's English major back up to those lyrics.
Right.
Right up there.
No, this is feminism in action. She's not holding the door saying, "Welcome home, sir."
I like, wives should always be lovers too. So if you're not sexually available for your husband, then your marriage is at stake and it's all your fault if your husband doesn't want to fuck you.
You can't rape your wife.
Ugh.
Oh God, please! That's actually, you should have trigger warning to that. Sorry.
Oh man, that is like the mentality of this era too.
Well, this era, the continuing era. I mean, like, what was it, 1992? When
until we got
until we got universal acceptance of that in this country.
And you still have politicians trying to say that no, it doesn't count.
If she's wearing a nightie, it doesn't count.
Forgot about that asshole. Jesus.
Or she's your wife, and then there's all the other weird stuff like women shouldn't wear panties so that Jesus can enter them.
Oh yes, I remember that preacher. But wasn't that in Africa?
I think that was a counter argument we had at one point.
Well, there was like a literal preacher in Africa who checked all of his female parishioners for panties.
Yeah. I feel like we talked about that particular person on the show. I don't know if they were a counter argument or if they were a troll of the week, but I am fairly certain we talked about that person. Alright, let's keep going with this song. We're only halfway through.
Today, there are girls at the office, and men will always be men.
Oh boy.
Okay.
So it's gender essentialist that he cheats on you.
So, this is why I get irritated with like MRAs and shit, is because feminists seem to think more highly of men than even other men seem to think of themselves.
Well, see, men don't want responsibility for their actions. They want full agency in which to act upon them. Or at least not all men, I'm sorry. Of course, not all men.
Not all men.
But, you know, men who...
Yes, all men!
men and the women who buy into this stereotype. Generally, yeah, I mean, it's basically like men are not are given full agency to act upon their actions and no responsibility.
No responsibility.
I mean, really, isn't that the best of both worlds? I wish I could have that.
So this is the 60s when white affluent women were entering the workforce, because let's be honest, women have always been part of the workforce, but this is when white affluent women are part of the workforce now.
Revolution.
Yeah. And I like how this is blaming women entering the workplace on men's infidelity. It's still not their fault that they're not being faithful to their presumably monogamous relationships, because men will be men, which is kind of the whole boys will be boys bullshit.
It's essentialist. You see, it's gender essentialist that men are not responsible for where their penis goes.
Because their penis has a mind of its own? Somehow?
It's like a dowsing rod. It just finds the nearest pussy and sticks itself in.
As somebody who, before, like, until earlier this year, owned a penis, I can assure you that I was able to think despite having one, and I didn't put it in anything, so...
The only penises I've ever owned have been store-bought or negotiated for.
Yeah.
Through contracts and such. But even then, I'm pretty sure that someone was always wielding a power.
Penises aren't magic.
They are not voodoo dicks.
I don't know. I mean, like, again, you just replace one letter in Harry Potter throughout the book, and it becomes penises are magical. Replace the D with a G. Harry grabbed his wang and cast a spell.
Oh my goodness.
That raised us some questions about Hermione, but let's keep going with this terrible, terrible song.
Don't send him off with your hair still in curlers. You may not see him again.
Okay, so you're even working to be pretty, like you're being told to,
right?
And even that won't prevent you from having him just be a deadbeat and leaving you.
You have to be pretty, but you have to maintain the illusion of natural beauty. Otherwise,
yes, don't let him see the way it works. But more importantly, get up at the crack of dawn and cook his breakfast with full makeup and hairspray.
Like, man, dudes must have really fragile mental states if they can't handle seeing the woman that they're married to in a state of partial dress or partial preparedness for the day.
Partial dress is fine as long as the artifice up top
is
complete.
Like, okay, so you want your woman to be pretty, but you don't want to know all of the work that goes into creating that pretty facade that you're interested in.
I mean,
no. What they're wanting is the woman who wakes up like an hour before him, goes to the bathroom, puts on all the makeup and stuff, and then crawls back in bed to hide the fact that she didn't put on makeup, make it look like that's her natural who she is.
Precisely, but if we're going to get socialist about this,
I'm always down for getting socialist about this.
Which I do not. Which is an identity I don't claim, but an identity I intersect with often. I'm a far left radical buddy. How's that? But okay. So here's the deal. You have an entire industry that's been built upon you must change your appearance often. I mean, you can watch Century of the Self. Watch the first 2 installments. You'll puke. But like seriously, you've got like. You've got this entire industry that's like ramming itself down, culture throat, whatever. But you've got this entire industry that says you have to do these things and buy the right coffee or he's going to leave you.
Yeah. And this whole weird, like, exploitation of your insecurities in order to make you buy more shit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't see how this is any less than that.
Pretty much.
It's going to be played right next to advertising to make you buy a thing.
Right.
For wives should always be lovers too. Run to his arms the moment he comes home to you. He's almost here. Hey, a little girl, better wear something pretty.
Oh, here we go.
Something you're glad to go to the city.
There you go. There's a sales pitch. Buy a dress.
Yep. You better wear something pretty, something you'd wear to go to the city.
I mean, just hey, little girl, wear something pretty. It's like that combined. Like, you don't hear pretty usually ascribed to older women. It's generally something used for younger girls and all that. And so it's like, oh, wear this little pretty pink dress, tutu, whatever. Like little girl again. It's again infantilizing.
Yeah.
Well,
and then we go to the slinky, go to the city, what you'd wear to the city kind of thing.
Well, it's the whole sex scene infantilizing thing, but it's basically like you can recapture your youth if you do these things.
Yep. That, and I feel like it's also kind of shaming you for the whole, like, oh, you dress up to go to the city, but you don't dress up for your husband that you see every day. Like, no, man. He should be okay with how I look when I'm just staying at home. Like, if you can't love somebody in sweatpants and a tank top, then I don't know what to tell you.
Since when do you wear sweatpants and a tank top at home?
if you do not love me in my yoga pants and messily done top knot and cherry flavored lip gloss,
exactly,
then you don't get this.
Exactly.
I don't care.
And I don't know, hetero problems, man. Like, I don't understand this. Like, I feel like even butch women understand how much shit goes into pulling off femme looks. Like, femme's complicated. Femme requires a lot of investment and time to pull off. It doesn't just happen naturally. But there's this weird shit where straight men want to, like, maintain the illusion that it does happen naturally and that it doesn't require a lot of effort.
Well, like, yeah, when you're wearing, like, a half a gallon of makeup and you talk about having put it on that morning and people look at you like you're wearing makeup, like, yeah, this took effort.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to take effort on your appearance.
Sure.
It's weird to expect someone to take effort on their appearance, but then also expect them to hide the effort required for that appearance.
Yeah.
That's some weird doublethink shit that I can't...
Yeah, it's very Orwellian, really.
And this whole mindset has an extra layer of sexism to it, because it's like, I don't put into going to being beautiful, but you're going to know about the effort I put into just taking a shit. Like, you're going to have, I don't want to, you're doing this nice pretty thing, whatever, and I'm going to do something that grosses you out or what have you, and you're going to know about it.
I'm dropping a deuce and I'm not even going to flush.
Or close the door, or just be like, hey honey, come in here and take a look at this.
I've done that.
That's the best kind of misandry ever.
I've done that.
I think we're almost done with this song.
And dim all the lights for the wine. Start the music. Time to get ready for love.
And do that every night.
So you have to initiate sex, but I'm also betting money that this person thinks that women who initiate sex are sluts.
Oh, definitely. But, it's your husband. You need to be a little slutty, dear, or he'll go run off with that secretary that we talked about already.
Those easy women who work in an office.
Yeah, so easy they're not prostituting themselves for money and actually sitting at a typewriter. But whatevs.
Sitting at a typewriter, putting up with your sexual harassment bullshit.
Because sexual harassment didn't exist in the 60s.
No, of course not.
It was just called Tuesday.
That's just a compliment. What are you so up in arms about?
Hey, baby, nice ass squeeze.
God. Oh, God, my first job.
Oh, man. Oh, so many things. Are we done? Let me see.
Yeah, basically, it just
So who wants to bet money this was playing at Neiman Marcus?
Man, I don't even, like... So we have that women belong in the home as part of this song.
Sure, which is a post-Freudian idea.
We have that it's perfectly natural for men to want to go astray in monogamous relationships, and that men only think with their dicks.
That's an all-the-time idea. That's post-Freudian. Although I'm sure that I'm sure that Freud didn't disassemble that at all.
Oh, speaking of Freud, since we're on the whole PTSD show topic, I have a new counselor here in Atlanta area. She has a Freud action figure.
Nice!
I want one. I've seen them before.
Do they come in Carl Jung flavored? Because I prefer that.
They do have Carl Jung.
They do have Jung.
Yay!
I've seen Jung also.
Because, I'm all into the tarot and the mandalas and the weird stuff.
I have a collection of, I call them my queer men action figures.
Nice!
So I have Alexander the Great, Leonardo da Vinci, Oscar Wilde,
Shakespeare,
and William Shakespeare. Those are my queer men action figures that I have.
She's also got her one queer woman, Rainbow Dash.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's hard, man. I can't find any queer women action figures, which sucks. Because I need some queer women also, but...
Yeah, when I
went that's the whole thing, is they don't suck, they lick.
I see what you did there.
Last time I was in a toy aisle looking for a decent feminine toy, or at least woman action figure toy. There was Slave Leia with a pained look on her face.
There are Jane Austen action figures.
Nice, I need one.
And there's Emily Dickinson action figures.
And of course I need one of those.
Especially since our girl riot punk band is Emily Lickingston, right?
Yeah, it's because we decided Jane Closton would have to be for our punk rivals.
Yeah.
We're going to be the gem of all girl cover bands.
Oh, man. I'm so excited. And what's great is when we start our covering male love song girl riot punk band is... I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty good at singing parts that are originally intended for men. So.
I'm good at singing, period.
I'm an alto, so, you know.
I was operatically trained. I can't reach for soprano anymore, but I have fun.
I'm a tenor, I think.
Cool.
I still remember when I was...
Honey, you're a baritone.
I still remember when I was pre-transition and I was in high school, and my choir director called my ass out. He's like, "What part do you sing, Mooneyham?" And I was like, "I sing baritone." He's like, "Bullshit, you sing baritone." It's like, I'm gonna take you to this piano and we're gonna find out what part you sing. And he's like, "I don't think you even sing tenor 1. I think you sing alto." And I was like, "I can't sing alto, Mr. Stroud."
You can't put me there. Don't put me there.
Don't put me there, then everyone will know. Oh, man. My choir director was a flaming queen, too, so I feel like he knew what was going on.
Oh, yeah. Other people always know before you do.
I don't know.
How does that happen?
It happens. It's fucking weird. I don't get it. Well, I guess that's all the time we have. Be sure to join us next week and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog at secularshethinkers.wordpress.com. I'm your host, Dory Mooneyham. Our panelists tonight were Caitlin Fairchild and Kate.
Yes, Kate the Great.
Kate the Great. Our music includes Iron Man by Sound J, I Don't Know by Grapes, Spinnin' by Alex Baroza, and February Mumble Mix by Incoherent Mumble Train, featuring Calendar Girl. Shethinkers is sponsored by Audible.com and BeSecular.com. Thanks for listening. And now, in the interest of being fair and unbiased...
Well, we are unbalanced.
That is true.
In the interest of being fair and unbiased, here is tonight's counter-argument.
Do you stick by your statement that the Democrats and Obama, and by separating the races or trying to, is conducting a war on whites?
Absolutely.
Okay, explain for those who didn't hear the whole statement on Laura Ingraham there.
Well, sure. Look at what the Democrats do on a regular basis. They appeal to specific racial groups by saying, we will protect you, that specific racial group. Now, who are they talking about protecting them from? Well, they're talking about protecting them from Republicans. But at the same time, what do they say about those Republicans? That they're whites.
Oh, shit, here we go! It's on! Race war!
Lift me up, let me go all silvery. Planet smooth while you're lying next to me. Like the sun high above, you're the whip and the glove. Miss me sweetly, I'd hide you find me. See some my toy store, never know what I'm looking for. Right on top of every wave the ocean makes. Take me out, mountain shiver under me. Rhythm running river over my feet. Like a world holding me, you're the clouds and the trees. Miss me sweetly, I'd hide you find me. See some toy store, never know what I'm looking for. Right on top of every wave the ocean makes. And I read it in a storybook that a telltale heart is well understood. And you couldn't do a thing for me. I'm much past help, you see. Hear that sound fly around the world on a balloon trip. Take my love, double it and triple it. Show my hand, it's not too bad, not too soft and not too hard. Miss me sweetly, I'd hide you find me. See some my toy store, never know what I'm looking for. Right on top of every wave the ocean makes. Right on top of every wave the ocean makes. Every breath the world takes.
Hey, Caitlin.
Hey, Dory.
So now that men are obsolete and we don't need them anymore, what's the first thing you're going to do in the lesbian utopia?
Institute clothing optional laws.
Yes!
Movies everywhere!
Woo! I feel like I have to flash myself now.
Well, I mean, you think about it, is all we have so much shit with clothing about women that is completely sexist. It's about controlling the women and how they look and all that. And I'm actually looking at something on here right now that leads to harassment. It's like, well, fuck it. Wear what the fuck you want, or wear nothing at all if you want.
Man, if I lived in a clothing optional society, I would only wear clothes when it gets cold.
I'm kind of a clothes horse. I love to wear clothes, but the amount of clothing would definitely change if I didn't have to worry about street harassment and other harassment.
See, like, I'm comfortable with my body until I have to put clothes on it, and then I get uncomfortable with my body because most things aren't made for women.
Busty women?
Most things aren't made for plus-size women with G-cup breasts in mind. So.
True. I don't have as much of a problem with that. I have more of a typical body, I suppose. It's a little more. It has a little more. It's retaining a little more than I'd like to right now, but that's all my fault. I'm not doing anything about it. But like, I don't know. It's like I still think I'd want to be frilly. I still think I've bought into this, anti-socialist idea that I should buy these clothes in these colors that come out every season, right? I'm like totally a consumer whore when it comes to that.
I have to say I'm becoming more comfortable with clothing if I just go butch, then I'm feeling more comfortable.
Hey, I've got butch outfits. I like flannel.
I like being femme every now and then, but man, it's so much easier to be butch.
I love flannel and softball and all those fun things.
Like, I got a top with dirty nerdy earlier in the month, and once I put it on, I was like, God damn, I make a good looking butch lesbian.
And you showed me your ID picture. You've pretty much always made a good.
I pretty much always have made a good looking butch lesbian.
You were born that way, baby.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm getting my Les haircut tomorrow.
It's exciting.
Yeah. Are you ready for testosterone, Dory?
Am I ready for testosterone? What?
The first time you got hormones?
That story's hilarious. First time I went to get hormones, they thought I was a trans man instead.
Oh. So they wanted to give you testosterone.
Even though I was wearing a dress, which I feel like properly communicates that I identify as female, and they were like, which way are you going? Are you a trans man? I'm like, dude, I'm wearing a fucking skirt. I don't think trans men usually wear skirts.
Some might. I mean, let's not judge. Some
might.
I find men in skirts highly attractive. I find women in skirts attractive too, but like, dude, queer that shit up.
I'm not saying there aren't like queer and femme trans dudes, but you know, if you're wearing a dress and you've got breasts, you're generally, well, maybe that's what threw them off, because I had breasts, so they were like, you must be a trans dude.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you threw off Felicia too. You went in boy mode, and she's like, "Oh, look at you! You're already a butch lesbian. How great!"
Right? Yeah. When I started therapy, that was funny. She was like, "You're already going full time," and I was like, "I am. This is my boy mode." I promise I'm trying to look like a boy right now. I'm trying so hard.
You have to keep in mind, she bordering on trans man, butch women. She dates women that you address as sir.
Yeah, my therapist likes them butch.
Like
hard butch.
To give you an idea, Kate, I had one time, like, I've been having dreams, like, for 2 weeks now about this one same girl, so I made a Sims version of her, and I showed this to everyone else, and they're like, man, she looks so much like a guy, what the hell? And then I show her to Felicia, and she's like, yeah, she's too femme for me.
Yeah, I kind of am attracted to this weird intersection of, like, feminine men and, like mostly butch women.
I like butch girls. Butch girls are hot.
I mean, every once in a while I fall for a femme and it's nice, but I generally like I like men who are a little more on the feminine side. I don't usually go for butch men.
Yeah, I tend to fall for like butch girls or like chapstick girls, like
Yeah.
somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Like hard femme is harder for me.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of hard femme.
Hard femme is hard. Like it's like, come on, bitch, we're just going to the grocery store. It doesn't take 3 hours.
I mean, my hat's off to you, because femme is hard to pull off. That requires commitment and effort that I don't have the patience for.
3 hours to get it ready just to go to the damn grocery store.
You know, whatever. I ain't gonna judge. I can go to the grocery store by myself. Alright, good night, guys.
It's worth it, though. They're fucking hot.
Oh, good night, everyone.